Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar. We're going to wait a minute or so to get started to give everyone that hasn't arrived the chance to jump online with us here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Carolyn Kushwa, and I am a Marketing and Communications Specialist at Testo North America. We have a great session for you today on the Smart Digital Manifolds from Testo. To kick things off, let's go through a few logistical matters. Our session today will run about an hour. We have all attendees muted, but we encourage you to submit questions in the questions panel to be answered at the end. We are recording the session today, and we will send the recorded version to you afterwards via email. Now I'll go through a brief introduction to Testo and our products and services. For over 60 years, Testo has stood for innovative measuring solutions. Testo helps over 650,000 customers worldwide save time and resources, protect the environment, ensure quality, meet regulatory expectations, and increase the value of their goods and services. Testo is a major supplier of monitoring instruments for markets as diverse as chemical, food service and production, pharmaceutical and biotechnology, as well as commercial and residential HVAC suppliers. Our speaker today is Leon Granger. Leon is the Western Regional Manager for Testo's HVACR division. He has been in the heating and air conditioning industry for over 20 years and in multiple markets, including Florida, the southeastern United States, and now the West Coast. He received his Bachelor of Science from Lindenwood University in St. Charles, Missouri. Leon and his wife now reside in Scottsdale, Arizona, and enjoy mountain biking and hiking the Arizona outback. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Leon to dive in.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you for everybody on the call today. What we're going to do is go over the new manifolds and kind of go over a little bit of application, some of the changes we've made, and we'll go into a few things in the Smart Probe app as well, because it kind of blends together with the Smart Probe, or with the manifolds. So at first glance, when you're looking at our manifold here, if you're familiar with our older generation manifolds, the buttons is the first thing that jumps out. It's a lot different. We added the meter sweep on the screen. We've also added, for most of our manifold kits, whether it's the 4-port 557S or the 550S, the flexibility of Bluetooth probes for the pipe clamps, and the vacuum probe as well. So just looking at everything at a glance, one of the things that we do, with our manifolds, we have more of a vertical display, much easier to read. Most of our Testo customers are very like that vertical display rather than horizontal, where it's spread out. We also have made some changes to the reliability and just the robust housing with the IP54 protection class. So we've increased the protection for durability, dropping, dust infiltration, things like that, and water resistance, if you will. This is not something that would be submersible or anything like that in water, but it does have a much better standing up to rain and things like that versus the previous models that we've had. And then also we have made it much easier to use the our vacuum probe with other manifolds, whereas before you were locked in with a wired 557 manifold for the vacuum. Now it's actually a Bluetooth Smart Probe that works in conjunction with all of our manifolds and also by itself. So that's another feature that we've changed. Again, talking about the better flexibility measurement and documentation using the Smart Probe app. We've completely redone the Smart Probe app, and the manifold actually works with it with about a 300-foot range as well. You can take that data and email or forward that data on that you've recorded and send it to an email address in a PDF or CSV file. Also, because of the button layout, we've made it much easier to run through the menu. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We only have an escape, power button, up and down, and then menu and enter button. So the previous layout of the buttons was a lot more 2006, 2007 style, whereas now the selection of refrigerants and things like that is much easier, and it makes more sense with that convenient refrigerant selection, and also setting favorites for your refrigerants as well. Improved case, much more robust design. We've included some extra spaces to add some probes. The vacuum probe, as I mentioned, is a spot there for it. There's a spot for two psychrometers, two pipe clamps, of course, and there's also a little bit of room to add a wired pipe clamp because we do have the flexibility to use both wired or wireless Bluetooth pipe clamps with ours. And also the design with the hook, or you can use the magnet. The magnet is an add-on accessory you'd have to purchase separately. This soft case is what we use with our 550i smart manifold, which we'll talk a little bit about. It's the same type of smart probe case you would use that you've seen with the smart probes. Same similar case, just a different cutout, so the manifold would fit in there. And again, additional areas you can put smart probes and add on to that as well. You have the same availability to those different hooks, magnets, and things of that nature to suspend the manifold while working on it. Now, I do want to remind you that the hook really isn't intended to hang the manifold from your truck when driving down the road like you would with, like an old set of analog gauges. The analog gauges are much lighter. You got to remember that you're carrying around a computer in the back of, in this. That's why we have a case. We want to make sure it's secure and taken care of. So, kind of getting into the to the manifolds, the screened manifolds, the 5.5 or the 550S and the 557S. We're going to talk about the layout and kind of giving you some visual ideas of what it looks like and what we've changed physically to the unit. So starting from left to right, what we've done is we've added that mini DIN socket for the cable temperature probe, right? So you do have the flexibility to use a cable probe. Most of the kits are going to include Bluetooth, but we did include this, and we did, because of the IP54 protection class, we added that gasketing socket, that rubber gasketing that goes over the plug, so it's protected from dust, dirt, moisture, and things like that. Again, the layout of the 4-port or the 3-port valve assembly here is really similar to pretty much the same as we've always done. Some of the voice of customer feedback that we've received from contractors was they didn't want that changed at all. So as you can see, it's pretty much the same as we've always done. We have added the mini USB in the back there. That's probably more for service and a calibration type things you would do. Again, on the right side, same as the left, you have that DIN socket for the temperature probes to connect to on the wired version. Okay. And then talking about the 557, there really is no difference as what we've changed is there. The same feel. The only difference between the 550S and the 557 is that fourth connection for the larger hose. But other than that, we are looking at that same changes there we made physically there to it. Again, I bring your attention to our vertical layout and also the new meter sweep that we put on the display. Those are big changes for the screen. So this is the 550i, the screenless manifold that you would use in conjunction with the Smart Probe app. Same valve block assembly as the 3-port 550S that we're using here, except it still has a very robust, strong design IP54 protection class, the same as the others. You just don't have the screen. Really good for taking measurements in above and beyond refrigeration measurements. If you're looking at the load or the capacity application within the Smart app, you can go back and forth through your refrigeration with the 550i, which is a big difference. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more in a minute. between the 550i and the 557s and the 550s, you are going to be grounded or using only those refrigeration and vacuum type applications that are in the manifold. So you're mirroring your screen from your manifold to the Smart app. You will not be able to look at the other applications within the Smart app that are not listed on the manifold's menu option. So we'll talk about that in a second here. So we're just going to get back to kind of talk more about the 550s and the 557's screen and menu options here for a second. So as you're looking at the screen, when you're looking at a live screen here and you go into your menu, you're going to see this screen. It'll give you measuring modes, your Bluetooth, your settings, and each of those are going to have different things. So the measuring mode is pretty easy. You're going to go in, that's where all your applications are going to be, like refrigeration, targeted superheat, your vacuum, and things that have to do with that application itself. And then the Bluetooth menu option there is just to switch on Bluetooth and connect to the app, smart probes and things like that. Settings can be language, unit, lights, etc. And again, we already talked about the bottom layout of buttons, your up, down, your escape power button, your enter menu button, and then of course your backlight as well is on the same button there. But when you start the manifolds up, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to, the wizard starts automatically when you use the device, or after resetting the factory settings. This can happen. Once you set the language to English US, the units are going to automatically be changed to what we use here, and won't be any metric stuff on there. So that's a good thing to remember. Once you do that, if you hit English UK, obviously it would go to those other type measurements and metric system that you probably would not want to use. Then we also have another screen with the Testo Smart app automatically there, so you can go ahead and download the Smart app if you haven't already. And again, that's the Testo Smart app. And that would be just helping you download it on the phone, so you can communicate your updates to your manifolds are going to come through the application side of it. We push out those updates, and then when you turn the manifold on next time, it'll ask you if you want to do that update. That goes for changes to added refrigerants that we bring on board and things like that. So you always have the option, if you're at a job, to skip the update and wait till later, because sometimes those updates can take 5-10 minutes, and you might want to be getting crews out of the job there and not have to sit and wait for some sort of download to come down with it. It doesn't make any difference to the measurement that you're doing that day. So we're going to go into the measurement applications here. When you hit the measurement mode, you're going to get a selection screen. Now, what I was talking about with the 550i Smart manifold was that in the 550i, you're able to see more applications in the Smart app versus in the manifold, you're only able to see these in the Smart app as well as on the manifold itself. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about using these as well. So evacuation. I know these aren't kind of lined up perfectly, but for your vacuum probe, you have the evacuation there used with the vacuum probe itself. And then the pressure leak test. This would be used when you're, anytime you're pulling a system down, you want to pressurize it with nitrogen again to see how your decay is, or how that well holds nitrogen. You can do this as you don't have any other smart probes. Everything's built in the manifold to do this. You also have your targeted superheat, where you're using a cyclometer to get your indoor wet bulb, your outdoor dry bulb, and your obviously your superheat side as well, your refrigeration side probes and pipe clamps. Compressor test is going to help you look at the efficiency of your compressor working. That's all through multiple pipe clamps as well. And the delta T, if you're wanting to look at that as well. That's a different application you can do to perform that. So as we get into the refrigeration measurements with superheat and subcooling, this kind of walks you through everything you need. You'll either need 2 wired pipe clamps or 2 wireless pipe clamps, and actually you could use one of each, but just so you know the versatility and that you have in these applications. So if you use the wired pipe clamps, it's just going to measure say T1 and T2 on that temperature area. When you use the Bluetooth pipe clamps, just like with any other smart probe, on the back of the pipe clamps, there is a number. We don't signify high side or low side. We signify a number, and then you would take that number and put it on, when you connect it, and you put it on that high side or low side where it has been connected in the manifold. It's pretty easy to do. So there, and then here you would also select your refrigerant to make sure you're correctly getting the right subcooling or superheat number based off the pressures and the temperature chart that are downloaded in the cloud. So again, we get a lot of people sending things back, and the service side gets it, and they were selecting, instead of 410A, they had 401 or some other refrigerant that was close to it on there, or they were selecting just the wrong refrigerant altogether. So that does happen, and always make sure you have to have the right refrigerant selected to get the right reading. So just remember that as well. You can also zero out the pressure on these, and it's recommended every time you use it. So going into evacuation, so you've got a target entered there. You can set up alarms for you to know when you hit that. So if you're multitasking, again, this is external. You're using this, you're connecting this to the unit or to your core removal tool to get those readings. And then also you have a decay target as well that you can put on there with alarms to help let you know when you reach that threshold. So again, this can be used by itself. It can be used through the manifold, and you can read your information through the manifold, and you can also read it through the smart application as well. So pressure leak test kind of coincides with your vacuum test as well. You can do this. Again, no probes are really needed. You just have the 557 and the 550, and everything's built into them to do this type of measurement, so you can kind of see where you are with your nitrogen. You put nitrogen in the positively filled it, and then you're going to look and see what kind of over a certain amount of time, what kind of deficiency you may have in that leak check. Target superheat. Now, target superheat is a specific type of superheat reading that you're going to get by getting the wet bulb, indoor wet bulb, outdoor dry bulb, and this would be much more accurate at getting your superheat reading, and this is what you want to do. So that this is in our system. This is an application side to both the manifolds and our smart probe application as well. And then we also have the compressor outlet temperature or compressor test that we have. Checking the compressor outlet, you're going to use 3 of the pipe clamps, 1 at the outlet of the compressor, so we can we can rule out any superheating or anything of that nature. So you can use both wired or the wireless pipe clamps here. Of course, the wired, you'd only be able to use 2. You definitely need at least 1 Bluetooth pipe clamp as well. And this is also, you can do your delta T between T1 and T2 to kind of see where you're at. And sometimes looking at through heat pumps, and there's some rules of thumb that you're going to look at based on delta T. So the way we offer the manifold, the 550S, we have 4 kits. So we have 2 with a vacuum probe, 1 with hoses and pipe clamps, and then we do have an entry-level one that's got the wired pipe clamps. That's going to be the price point sensitive version, and it's very competitive with most of our competitors out there. So this is something, and then later on you can add the accessories. All of the probes you can buy one at a time, so you can get those a la carte and build your kit up the way you want it. The 557 we've always offered with the vacuum, so we didn't want to take that away. So we only have 2 kits, 1 with everything, and then 1 with everything plus hoses. So that's the way that we go to market with our 4-port, and so actually the 557S is our most popular refrigeration manifolds out there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the Smart Digital Manifold that we spoke before. Now, again, the flexibility you receive with the 550i is the ability to go through every application offered on the Smart Probe app without having to turn off your manifolds and look at other some of those other ones. So one of those is your calculation of capacity on the system, which we'll talk about in a second here. So on the refrigeration side, if you're doing subcooling or superheat, it's really nothing different except you're going to be connecting in the app, okay? You're going to only have the option for wireless pipe clamps. So you would connect those 2 pipe clamps and make sure you have the right coded number on the back of the pipe clamp at the right, whether it's high side or low side, okay? And then it would automatically calculate those readings for you. Again, with the vacuum probe, this is a same deal. You could set up a different alerts on your target and decay to get there, and you would get those alerts. You have a 300 and 350 unobstructed view. Mind you, that's through walls and doors. It's going to drop that range down. But effectively, even with the manifold or with the smart manifold, you could pull a vacuum out. You could be in a truck making calls. You could be talking to a customer. Cleaning up, multitasking, things like that. Again, target superheat. Nothing changes here. We're looking at the same readings. We're going to need to have a dry bulb temperature and a wet bulb temperature inside. So your outdoor dry bulb and your return air wet bulb is really what you want. The return air wet bulb, as close to the coil as you can get. I failed to mention that before, but that's how you're wanting to do that. And there's also, again, that pressure leak test can be performed as well. So you can also use a 605 or a 905i thermometer to for temperature compensation if that was something you needed to dial in a little bit closer. So just kind of jumping into, and this is the same for the manifolds, is when you want to do customer management, this is a really great tool. I know a lot of your dispatch and software out there for AC companies does a lot of this stuff for you, but it's nice to have it in the application, an alternate method to do this. You can hit different measuring points for each customer, meaning you can have multiple systems for one customer. You can identify them as the West Wing unit, RTU number 4. You have an unlimited amount of ways to do that for each customer. You can create these reports and email them to the customer really easily through the application. We make it really easy to do that. You can add comments in this section from when you visited, and then this could be pulled up. You could send that. You could do this again on a job 6 months from now. You can pull up and see what the comments were to better understand what's going on with the system back then to maybe help make a diagnosis at the time you're there. You can log data as well in this device and through our application. You can put information about the system type, manufacturer. You can put a serial number in there if you wanted to do that type of data intensity. So it's available to do that. We have spaces in there for that to happen. So we have live readings. We have a graph display that you can record and send out to show a particular time, whether it was a 10-minute runtime or whatever it was, to show what was going on in that system at that time. You can do that in a table through the CSV file, as well as, like I said, through a PDF file. So we give you an area on the menu there to the left to manage your sensors. You can connect and disconnect from the sensors and make sure everything you're connecting to the right one. It gives you the code on the back of the smart probe that we always put on the back of our smart probe, so you can make sure you're connected to the right one when you're in a job that's using multiple smart probes. Think of temperature probes through maybe you're looking at your registers and seeing what your temperature changes are between each register. You'll be able to see which ones are connected, so you've got the right ones connected and manage it from here. So like I said, you're going to see these extra areas of smart applications that you can use that you can't use when you're using the manifold. So if you're using a lot of different probes and you're using your smart probes a lot, that smart manifold is a really good tool to use, because what if you wanted to go have your manifold hooked up and then you wanted to go run your volume flow as well, and you can always look back on your phone and see what your refrigeration circuit's doing and things like that. Same thing with volume flow outlet. You can have access to all this while the 550i is working. Differential pressure, differential temperature, your cooling and heating output, which is down there towards the bottom, which is a really great application to use on warranty calls, customer calls about a system's not keeping up. You can put this quick little test together with two 605i psychrometers. You need to get your airflow, and it will give you the BTU output of that system at said airflow. The airflow reading needs to be pretty accurate in order to get an accurate capacity reading. Then you take the manufacturer's data from their service facts or their installation manual, wherever they decide to put it, and take the outdoor dry bulb, indoor wet bulb, and run through that system and see what the manufacturer says is supposed to be doing that same type of situation. And it will show you how accurate and how close it is. And obviously, if there's something missing there and it's not doing what the manufacturer's specs have said it should be doing, then you know you've got other things going on there. So great tool, great application. So we have a handful of kits here. We've got you can buy it by itself. You know, if you have a Smart Probe case and you have the room to put this in, or maybe you can buy it by itself. You can buy it with two pipe clamps and a vacuum probe. And then also you can buy it with the two pipe clamps and two of the psychrometers, which again, like I said, it's a really great tool for measuring capacity and targeted superheat. That is it. And Carolyn, do we have any questions?
We do. Thanks, Leon. And thank you so much for that thorough overview. We do have some time for questions, so I have a few here, and if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to submit it in the chat panel on GoToWebinar. The first question I have here is, do you need to use the vacuum probe, or does the manifold have sensors built in as well?
No, that's a great question. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but actually has come up a lot recently. One of the things that we are separate, we try to differentiate ourselves from our competitors, is that we do have a external vacuum probe. We've been external for quite a while because we think it's better that way. If there's ever an issue with the vacuum probe, you don't have to send your manifolds in. You keep them in the field, and you just send the vacuum probe in. We'll check it out. We'll warranty it. Whatever that happens, you lose it at a job, whatever it is. You know, that's understandable. But we don't have any of that inside the manifold because we think it's an added warranty issue that could occur, and then you don't have your manifolds in hand. So we want to always make sure you have those manifolds, and you know, replacing a vacuum probe can be pretty easy, pretty quick. So that's why we do that. So just keep that in mind. That's a big differentiator between us and those other competitors out there.
Great. Another question here is, can I use both the Smart app and the Smart Probe app if I have both on my phone?
No, we don't recommend doing that at all. You want to use the Testo Smart, okay? The newer application that we have. Just, you know, go to you download the app from the screenshot that we have on the manifold, but not the Testo Smart Probes app. That's the older one that's got kind of an orange background. In fact, I'd recommend deleting that one off your phone. You can run into some issues having both of them on the phone, and we just don't recommend having it. I don't even know if it's available at the App Store anymore, but some people do have them both on the phone, and I've started telling people not to have both, just to have the newest one. So that's my answer there for that.
Perfect. Another question is there a limit to the number of customers that you can save in the app?
Not really. I mean, you have about 1 million sets of information you can have put in there. So there really isn't I don't think anyone will ever hit that threshold.
Excellent. Okay, great. I do think we are running out of time for today. So any questions that we didn't get to, I will have Leon respond to via email. And on behalf of Testo, I want to say thank you to everyone that attended our session today. And thank you to Leon as well for a really great informative session on our Smart Digital Manifolds.
Thank you, Carolyn.
All right, have a good day.